To the Point with Michael Williams.
From taxes to schools to sexual harassment and hurricanes, those are among the issues the Florida legislature will be taking up as the new session gets underway this week. Good morning and welcome. The legislative session about to begin, and my guest, one of the most powerful people in Tallahassee, Stewart Republican and Florida Senate President Joe Negron. His district covers Martin, St. Lucie, and parts of Palm Beach County as well. And thank you for being our guest, a familiar face here on To the Point.
Good morning.
Hope you all had a good holiday and a good new year to you and the family. Let's begin. Top priorities for you as the session gets underway.
Well, I think the issues that I'm going to focus on this session with my colleagues in the Senate, number one is we've made tremendous progress in my goal that our universities in Florida will be thought of as premier elite national destination universities like the University of Virginia, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We've made tremendous progress with our Bright Futures program. We now have the academic scholars getting 100% of tuition, getting their books paid for, $300 a semester, and also their fees. We want to bring that also to the medallion scholars to put them up at 75%. So we've done a lot of things to elevate our universities to keep more national merit scholars staying in Florida at our universities. I want to do monitoring and oversight with the building of the reservoir that will help us stop the discharges from Lake Okeechobee that Channel 5's done an extraordinary job covering over a period of many years. And then I think the opioid crisis is very important in Palm Beach County and on the Treasure Coast to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help people who have an addiction and want to get help, and then cracking down on people that are selling.
Let's do those slightly in reverse order and dig in a little bit more deeply. Let's talk about the reservoir. Of course, we had the water crisis of 2016, not that kind of problem in 2017, but still concerns. You helped author and push for the reservoir south of the lake, the $800 million in state money there. Where do we stand on construction timetables, and most importantly, the federal piece of that money, the other half of the $1.6 billion to begin that piece of the project?
Well, first of all, we've had very strong support from our congressional delegation for the federal piece, and because it's a program that fits the match between the state and federal government, they will pay 50%. The Army Corps of Engineers has put it into their planning, and so they'll be making that request of Congress. So I'm very optimistic. We've had members of Congress who have visited the area and are very impressed that the state has already put up its money. We're not promising it, it's already funded. So I feel very good about where we are. The Water Management District right now is finalizing the footprint. We would love to have 100 to 120 billion gallons of storage. And remember, Michael, this is going to be dynamic storage. So water won't just be sitting there. It'll be moving south into Everglades National Park, into Florida Bay. And so I think it will really do a lot to reduce and ultimately eliminate the discharges.
You'll be pushing for Congress to get that money to you now, if they do, and by now I mean in this fiscal year, if at all possible. If that happens, what's the timetable for start and completion? And I would also caution to our viewers, it's part of the piece. It's such a complex plumbing project here in South Florida, and replumbing it is enormously difficult, but it's still critical. When could you start?
Well, we hope that we could start in a very short period of time once Congress puts the money in, then I'm hoping 3 to 4 years to complete.
And right now there's been a lot of talk of finishing the work on the dike around the lake, of critical importance to the security of the dike. That also plays into water flows in and out of the lake, also east and west, as we saw in 2016 and beyond. Everybody up to President Trump said they wanted to move the 2025 timetable to 2022. Is that going to happen?
It is. It's already happening. At Governor Scott's request, the legislature put $50 million in this year. The governor is asking for an additional $50 to $100 million of state funds. And then Governor Scott, and I give him credit for this, has been discussing this directly with the president. And Governor Scott has assurances that federal money will also be coming on an expedited way for completion of the dike. So I think it's a very big success story when the state and federal government work together.
Let's dig a little more deeply on education of such prime importance to you out there, with children or grandchildren in our community. $87 billion budget plan the governor has submitted. I think something like $12 billion he wants to set aside for push on increasing education funding. Go into a bit more of the details of how that can happen, what it will mean. And do you see that as smooth sailing here, his priorities, yours, and the rest of your colleagues in the Senate and House?
Well, we're going to have to work together to find the right number for an increase, but the Senate in particular has been very committed with making sure that our classrooms are well funded. We were very supportive of the governor's initiative, as was the House, with the recent increase we had in teacher pay. and we want to make sure that the local school boards have enough money to make pay increases. And I'm sure you've noticed how many school boards around the state, even here in Palm Beach County, have increased teacher salaries based on the additional funding that we've put in K-12. And I'm hoping as our economy continues to improve and to recover from the hurricane, that we'll have sufficient revenues to complete these priorities.
You also talked about more funding for scholarships and the like, but the critics will note this. They'll say, on the one hand, are we robbing Peter and paying Paul? Because they were very upset, local educators, you know this, who said, wait a minute, part of the last go around with the legislature was essentially giving more money to charter schools and really pulling money out of the public school system. And there are a lot of very angry administrators around the state who are saying, wait a minute, you're saying you're going to push for more education money, but in our opinion, you're robbing us with what you did with charter schools.
I understand their argument. I am an unabashed supporter and promoter of school choice. I believe that parents have the ultimate responsibility to decide the best education for their students. Charter schools are public schools, and so I want to give parents as much choice as possible. And I think taking a small amount of money for parents who want their students to have an alternative to a traditional classroom setting. I'm a very strong supporter of public education. Our children went to public schools. But I think we have to be open to the fact that parents want lots of options, charter schools, independent schools, homeschooling, and I think we should support all the choices that parents make.
We will not begin nor end that debate here, but it remains a loud debate, and we'll see how that plays out in terms of the funding. But you ultimately hope people sending their children on to college will see some differences, some more differences. We saw in Palm Beach County small pay raises. They still, teachers very underpaid in this state, across Florida. So these are incremental steps, many see them as, but important ones nonetheless from your view.
They are, and there's a direct connection between my push for universities and my emphasis on that this isn't for bragging rights. There's a direct correlation between how well our universities are thought of and the job prospects of students. We have way more companies now offering internships, hiring students, and the University of Florida, for the first time in its history, was ranked in the top 10 nationally of public universities. Florida State University went up 9 slots. There are pockets of academic excellence at all of our universities, and we are now seeing more and more students that have options. So these are students that you know, these are yield. Where are they going to go after they've been accepted? With our National Merit Scholars, we're now up to 1,100 National Merit Scholars. It's more than double what it was 5 years ago because our schools are better and they're staying here.
Other topics we need to touch on is you mentioned hopeful for some relief with classes at the K-12 level, hopefully more money for teachers. We'll see how it all plays out. You've talked about the university level. Let's turn for a moment, Hurricane Irma. A lot of people are wondering about money, hurricane cost. What are you looking at in terms of that post-Irma, in terms of what we're going to see with this budget? Is it going to wreck the budget or some parts of it? How do you see that playing out as we now assess the bill for Irma?
It's going to end up being a net neither way. We had some reductions in state revenue right after the hurricane for several months, but we're already recovering from that, and we're seeing our revenues pick up as people are able to return to work, as money from insurance companies to make repairs to homes and businesses is starting to come in. So the ultimate effect of it probably is going to be neutral for this budget cycle.
Opioid crisis of such paramount concern to so many people. We're in many ways ground zero in Palm Beach County. We've done and profiled stories in places like Delray Beach. The opioid crisis, the epidemic, is one that's hitting every corner of our society. How do you all tackle that?
Well, the good news on that front is that senators are doing what senators are elected to do, which is to listen, to learn, to be out in their communities. And Senator Rader and Senator Latvala co-hosted an event in Palm Beach County, which I attended, to hear from all segments on what we can do to address this crisis. I think the important thing for me is, if you're selling or if you're involved in illegal activity, we want law enforcement to crack down. But people who want to get help, who are acknowledging they have a problem, I view that more as a public health issue. We need to have more treatment and more medication-assisted treatment.
So how much more money do you want to see put toward that very thing?
Well, we're working on an exact number. Some senators have talked about $25 million increase up to a $50 million increase. That'll be up to the appropriations.
Critics will argue that's a pittance for the size of this problem.
It is,
but if it's a pittance, why not do a lot more?
I won't say it's a pittance. I will say that those are some initial requests that have been made by senators. In the House, the same. The governor has also been involved. So I think you'll see an increase. I can't predict what the exact number will be.
I want to talk about 2 other topics as we sort of set the table. We'll be certainly talking to you when you're in Tallahassee and beyond, but as we set the table for you, you mentioned Jack Latvala. We need to talk about sexual harassment. At one point, he's going to run for Florida governor. Now the Clearwater Republican, amid sexual harassment charges, is resigning. Talk about the cloud that hangs over Tallahassee right now and how you all tackle in a very direct way deal with the sexual harassment issue that we're seeing in every corner of society as well right now.
Well, the important thing to state up front is that the Senate has zero tolerance for sexual harassment or misconduct against any employees or visitors to the Capitol of any kind. And we've had that policy from day one. We want to encourage people to come forward. If they have a complaint, it will be handled confidentially and investigated. And I think from what we see from this particular case is that the allegations were carefully and scrupulously investigated by an outside party. Reports were made. Those reports are public. And the senator made the decision that he felt was best for him and his family. So I think what it shows is that we take this problem very seriously. And I think the vast majority of legislators conduct themselves appropriately, treat people with respect and courtesy and dignity. And I think when that doesn't happen and there's a complaint, I think in the Senate we showed that we'll have due process, but there will be accountability.
And let me be very clear, not a Republican or Democratic issue as we've seen around and around the country, but people are demanding more. And some have argued, listen, it's been a wink-wink, that everybody's known this kind of thing goes on wherever power collides with people who have interest before the legislature, where there's a power structure of those who want to move up, working with people in positions of power, and that it's a little late for people, including the Florida legislature, to act like, oh, we're just finding out about this. Could a lot more have been done in the past where this was sort of wink, wink, nod, nodded away?
I have to go by my personal experience, Michael. My personal experience has been that I see people working day to day with very talented staff, with other people that intersect with our office, with citizens that come to the Capitol, that the vast majority of times people are treated properly. When they're not, and when it comes forward, we're going to investigate and there will be accountability.
Last topic, the governor had mentioned, you say you support the idea of a constitutional amendment to limit the ability for the Florida legislature in the future to raise taxes. Talk about that.
Well, I think that we have adequate revenue to do what needs to be done in Florida. As you mentioned, we have probably about an $86–87 billion budget that we'll be working on this session. It forces us to prioritize, to make tough decisions the way families do and businesses do. And I think requiring a supermajority to increase taxes and fees, that's something that I'm open to. Senator Stargell in the Senate is filing that bill. It's a little different than the House bill, but I believe having something where it's more than just an up or down vote. Let's let the voters decide whether they want that or not.
My good friend and our political analyst often says to me, Brian Crowley, who'll be up in our next segment, too often we punt to the voters things that the legislature should have in their purview. Why punt that to voters? Isn't that the job of the Florida legislature to respond year by year? You can't know what crises may happen in the years to come that could tie the hands of future legislators. Why not just deal with that as elected lawmakers as it comes to you?
And we haven't raised taxes, and we've lived within our means, and we have very significant reserves that have been set up during my time chairing appropriations in the House and Senate, now as Senate President. And we have $3 or $4 billion that we've set aside in our rainy day fund. So I think we are walking the walk. I think the governor feels like it's important for future legislatures that may be comprised of different members to say, you know what, if you want to take more money from the voters, you should have a little bit of a higher bar. Let's let the voters give us their opinion. All
right, we'll see when you get to Tallahassee. My wild card question to you, I had somebody bring this up to me. Why not throw your hat into this gubernatorial ring that's all agog right now?
Well, I'm really enjoying the last session of being Senate President. I'm going to get through that term and that responsibility, then I'm going to make a decision on the future. But I've been elected until 2020 in my Senate seat, so I'm content where I am right now.
You rule out any possibility of running for governor in Florida in 2018?
Yes.
Any possibility? You heard it right here.
Right.
And we just figured we'd make sure that that wasn't was above on the radar. I know you and I as political junkies could talk all day on one of these topics, but as we set the plate, we'll be talking to you in your role as Senate President from Stewart here, the Senate's most powerful member, Joe Negron, Stewart Republican, doing the work of Floridians. It's going to be a busy time for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
And a happy new year to you and your family. Going on, what impact could President Trump have on the governor's race in Florida? Our roundtable will take that up and more when we come back.